Some of the leaders of the conference say no one wants, the lay preachers will hardly suffer anyone else to exercise the kind of authority that you have exercised. And Wesley here says the leadership should be taken over by the conference. And this is what he enacts during this period. Wesley decided to vest ultimate power not in another individual to succeed him, but the body of ministers known as the Legal 100. He draws up, with the help of Thomas Coke, the Deed of Declaration in 1784 and constitutes power upon his death to pass to the Legal 100. The Legal 100. Problem is, there were more than 100 preachers at this time. There was about 191 in 1784, and many of them felt aggrieved and ashamed that they were left off of the top tier 100 legal delegates, if you will. Here we see the first sign of a kind of two-tiered, almost general conference delegate ranking, with the haves and the have-nots left behind. They basically wrote a letter saying, are we not brothers too, and are we not itinerates and worthy of your authority? And Wesley said, no, the Legal 100 are the most worthy. And so we see this designated power shift over to the Legal 100 after Wesley's death. Also in 1784, this is a significant year because Wesley creates ordination for America and consecration of Francis Asbury, which we will talk about in a later piece. So we see there's a long tendency within Methodism, even back during the time of Wesley, to anoint chosen ones, if you will, to carry a larger amount of responsibility and authority. And again, a kind of caucus Methodism emerged even before Wesley's death. Right before Wesley's death, we see in this tension and transition period, he creates Wesley's Chapel in London. And here we're going into London, and we want to go down to what becomes Wesley's headquarters here in City Road, which today houses Wesley's Chapel, built in 1778. See here Wesley's Chapel. This is an interior view of it here. Built in 1778 to replace the foundry, and you can go from our Google Earth material. Wesley's Chapel has a lovely website which will give you the virtual tour. There's the history, and it's pretty interesting material. This was built in this last period of transition, and you can see the beauty, really the cathedral of Methodism, world Methodism today. So here's the pulpit, originally three-tiered. In 1864, the pulpit was lowered by 5 feet to become a single-tiered. Theology of that may have represented a kind of leveling or nevertheless, the hierarchy of the early period, where you'd have John Wesley, a clerk, and a other assistant at the bottom. They brought the foundry pews over into Wesley Chapel. I encourage you to spend some time looking at Wesley's chapel online. Of course, this was the place where he ultimately is buried. His tomb and his statue, John Wesley's grave, here in City Road Chapel, London, dying in 1791. So Wesley's death really sparks a change. At the time of his death, there's already over 100,000 people in world Methodism, mostly among the working, poor, and the middle class. And even up until his death, Wesley expected that Methodists would maintain Anglican worship, taking the sacraments there, always staying within the Church of England, which he called the most wonderful state church ever created. And Wesley believed that the movement would stay as a kind of preaching order within the Church of England. But upon his death, Wesley, being the center of union, as the conference called him, without this center of union, there were impulses that began to break away, and already by 1796, after his death, one group called the Methodist New Connection had splintered off. Wesley's last words apparently were, the most important is that God is with us, and a number of engravings of all the famous Methodists who were with him at his death were found during the 18th and 19th centuries. So we're going to look at the American Methodist story later, but it's important to just take stock here of Wesley's own significance at this time. Wesley didn't create the revival in Great Britain, but he sustained these revival forces that were really being exploited by he and George Whitefield on both sides of the Atlantic throughout the 18th century, creating one of the longest lasting revivals in church history, well over 50 years. And so this message of universal grace, a missionary orientation, with his goal to spread scriptural holiness throughout the land and throughout lands, and to renew the churches, to renew the lands and the nations, beginning with the churches, showing a both and, a mission to culture and a mission to renew the church by both working hand in hand along the axis of sanctifying grace. That churches would renew the image of God through scriptural holiness, and that individuals and churches would transform nations through this message that God's love in Christ was for the whole world. This was at the heart of the Wesleyan tradition, and that this form of grace in God's love of Jesus Christ for the whole world reminded the church in the 18th century that mission is not something optional. It is still the obligation of the Church of Jesus Christ to renew the image of God and to live according to God's ways in the world, so that the world would be renewed and that creation would be renewed and participate in God's fullness for all humanity and all creation. So Wesley's message of universal grace was found important to be shared in the field, in the marketplaces, in the prisons, the mines, and the bedside of those dying And yet preaching places were created, and churches within the Church of England tradition also found some measure of renewal because of this dedicated preaching order, dedicated to a concrete social expression of God's prevenient grace found in history and culture everywhere, justifying grace, which can be found through faith in the hearts of all humans who want to flee the wrath to come and cast their faith upon Christ, and the message of sanctifying grace, growing as a personal and social expression of God's love in the world, and living that love out in the world. This was a message with a mission and with concrete expressions through the itineracy, and thereby wherever in the world we call our parish, God's grace was being found. John Wesley and his movement took grace so seriously that they stamped that grace upon many nations throughout this world. As you can see, this list of or showing of stamps where Methodism has spread throughout the world. Most of these are British Methodist mission fields as well. But Wesley took the message of God's loving grace, saw it so seriously, and took it so seriously that he saw it in the world, that it needed to be shared in the world, but that God's grace in Jesus was already at work in the world preveniently. Wesley saw that it was a gift of God, the love of Jesus Christ, and that we could know that love and receive that gift of God through faith in justifying grace. And Wesley took grace seriously enough to see it grow through the assurance of faith, past the new birth, and on towards sanctifying grace that completed and renewed the image of God and brought reconciliation of the individual to God and of societies to God's perfect will for a new creation. And thus Wesley and the Wesleyan mission in the world brings culture and nature into alignment with God's love shown in Jesus Christ and shared through the Wesleyan movement. And so therein lies the stamp, the legacy of John Wesley upon the world and upon our movement. And my hope and prayer for you in looking at this life of Wesley and the development of revival is that we would find keys to our own renewal and to find transformation for ourselves and for our societies by spreading scriptural holiness wherever in the world we call our parish. Thank you, Virtual Circuit Riders. We will continue on in our next segment with mission in one of the first great mission fields of Methodism, America.